Okay, we are live and ready to go.
All right, welcome everyone to this Milburn School District 24 Board of Education regular meeting, December 13th, 2021. Can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Ross?
Yes, here, sorry.
Mr. Coleman?
Here.
Mr. Gray?
Present.
Mr. Lorenzen? Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Federini?
Here.
Ms. Roberts? Here.
Shall we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You got a new picture.
Yes, a student took that picture.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Do we have any public comments?
We did not from my end.
And does anybody have any addition of action items? Non-action items. No. Okay. Action items, press policy updates.
I've reviewed these press policies. There's nothing material that I think needs to be addressed. It's largely administrative.
Vanessa, did you have anything?
I have notes somewhere, but I feel the same way. I just made notes on what they were saying and the general idea of each one, but I didn't see anything,
Anything to take? No. Okay. Does anyone have any questions on this? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to, accept the press policy updates, 1.10 through, well, not 1 point, as listed on the agenda.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
The motion passed.
All right. Technology Department position, salary, and ranges.
Okay, this is what we talked about at our last meeting a little bit. Now I have a little more specificity around what we're looking for part of our tech department. So this is the services side, this is not the academic side of the tech department. What we currently have is a network or director of network or network administrator and one data support specialist, and then that's it as far as our tech. Oh no, and then we have one tech support specialist. So we have 3 people currently. This would turn in, with Ernest's retirement at the end of the month, would turn into 4 people. The price difference or the cost differential for that would be the difference over here. We are currently paying this for salary, and we are asking to go up to this a little bit more for salary in order to get that extra help with technology. So it's a difference of $7,164. Eventually, we don't have these people hired yet, so we're actually probably, by the time we get hired, it may not be any difference for next year, but I'm trying to just get an idea of what we're thinking down the road compared to current dollars.
I was gonna ask that benefits excluded?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason why I exclude benefits when I'm doing projections like this, we would want to do that for total cost down the road. But when there's only 4 people, one person may take health insurance and one person may not. One person may want family health insurance, one might not. So there's such a range there, it's hard to predict. And I'm trying to get as close to a comparable as possible.
like to make a motion to approve technology department positions and salary ranges as presented.
Second?
Do we have any further questions on this? How did you get these salary ranges? Is that, based on market data or something?
It's based on what we are currently paying people in similar positions. And a little bit more in some and adjusting, but taking some of the current salaries and boosting them a little bit. Like our data support specialist, this would be an increase, and these are just estimates, because I don't know where we'll hire people at, it depends on their experience. So, one of these could be at a higher rate, one of these could be at a lower rate, depending on what experience they bring to us. I've done a little bit of looking at what other districts are paying, and it's hard to tell because there's such a difference in what the expectations are for each of those positions, but we're pretty close to that range for, this is entry level tech support specialist.
This is super competitive right now, right? I mean,
Yes.
we have to assume that it's not gonna be 15, probably gonna be paid closer to 19.
Right, and if we can't find anybody for that, we
You
might
won't
have,
find anybody for that.
then we might have to come back and say, we need help,
I would anticipate that.
yeah.
And the one thing that does help us though are the benefits, which if somebody's looking for insurance benefits, and it makes a difference.
Yeah,
Depending
it's
on what other
super
jobs they're looking
competitive
at.
right now, like everything is just, as you know, it's just,
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to move someone from another school district to attract, even if they're making close to the same. That's a difficult move, because generally, people at an entry level are tied to the school district because their kids go to that district, or they live in that community, so, we'll see. I'm gonna send out an email tomorrow, with some of these asks, and see if anybody knows anybody. Also thinking might be someone, maybe at CLC who's going to school in the tech field, youngster who's looking to get some real world experiences. We pay a little bit of tuition too, reimbursement, so that could be really attractive for someone trying to get a start out in this field. We will do our best. We're not expecting someone to, at this pay rate, to come in and fix our networks or work on, machines. It's basically helping students log in, it's helping projectors connect, where you know how to do it, you're showing one time and then they can go around and help everybody else do it. It's more of those types of things. Screen breaks, so we take care of the cracked screen, we send that out to Apple to get it fixed. They just have to send it, box it, bring it back. Problem solved.
Okay.
So it's not super complicated work either. We'll see what happens. I don't know, it's so, the market, you're right,
Yeah.
Vanessa, the market is so weird right now, it's so difficult to predict who's available and what they would like to work.
well, you want people to stay too, cause like you wanna build a good tech department where it's like not costing everybody else, like administrators, constant oversight. You want people that are gonna stay and can like actually grow and get
Yeah.
to know the system.
Yeah,
That would be nice.
it would be nice. Yes, definitely. So if the board approves this tonight, what I do tomorrow is, we've already advertised for the tech support specialist position just to start getting, because we need help right away, just to get that out there. I would send out an email to our parents and see if they can scare up anybody. Also, the coordinator of tech services, which is a kind of a hybrid position of the network specialist and taking on more responsibilities in different ways, and we changed that job description. I would advertise for that tomorrow, and we may have an internal candidate interested in that, so. Thankfully, we have good people here already in that department, which is helpful, but we want to give them a little help and support as well.
Sure. Do you have any more questions? Roll call, please.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Foss?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
The motion passed.
On to the,
You weren't here when we started discussing. Huh? What everybody was called? Wasn't here at the beginning of that one?
To punishment, that's how.
And I'm up close.
welcome, John, nice to see you. Fiscal year 2021 property tax levy.
All right, so tonight we get to approve the property tax levy that we've been talking about for 2 months now. And, so here it is. The final numbers have not changed since the last time it was presented, I don't believe.
No, nothing has changed, it's the whole thing. Just all the resolutions are right there, and I can't remember if we had those for you before or not.
Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2021 property tax levy.
Second?
Does anyone have any questions before? Roll call, please, Brian.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Foss?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
The motion passed.
Add a little drama in there.
I'm thinking about it.
You've had plenty of time to think about it.
I know, but,
It's like the 11th hour stretch here.
hey, it's not midnight yet.
You wanna
We
wait up?
better not be here till midnight. Property tax relief grant.
All right, something more exciting, taking our property taxes and relieving them. So we've talked a lot about this as well, to approve the application for the property tax relief grant, and Dr. Johns did a nice job of laying out some of this information into a chart form. So he put the 2020 levy for the 22 budget, that's our current year. So this is, we don't have any control of this. This is done, gone. That's in the past. But we put that on there for comparison purposes. So should we be able to attain this grant, which we hopefully will approve and apply for in just a second, this is what it would look like for the FY23 budget. Again, this is an estimate based on projections. We don't know what the CPI is gonna do. Our
No,
final-
this is the one that we just approved tonight. This is the
Oh, yeah.
levy, this is
No, so
the
never mind.
21 for FY23, but until April or March or April, we won't know what the exact number is. We know approximately what it'll be.
Good point. So we know pretty close what next
That
year's will
one, that
be.
one's pretty close.
That one's real close. Thank you for that clarification. So we would be required to abate or give back to the taxpayers after we would levy the full amount, and then we'd do an abatement and give $869,000 back to the taxpayers. And so the levy after that abatement would be, within $1,000
Yeah.
of what it is this year. So it'd be basically flat in our community. So that's pretty nice. Then the following year, we'd have to do the same thing. We'd abate $869,000, and it would go up a little bit that year, but not significantly. And that must be because of the CPI.
Right, the CPI,
Your
I
estimate?
did it at a 4% estimate, but it's gonna be somewhere between probably 4.5 to 4.8, but a lot of times it depends on what happens in December between now and the end of the year, because they look at what CPI was, it's either December 31st or January 1st of last year, and what it is on that same date this year, and whatever that difference is what it is. So we've had several years where all of a sudden in December, the gas prices plummet, and then the CPI goes from you thinking you're gonna get 3 or 4% to getting maybe 2% or 1.5%. So it's amazing what just, you know, the cost of gas can do to the CPI that we use for the budgeting.
So what Dr. Johns did too is also like to point out the bond portion of the levy. So we are, this is the current year, so this is gone. Next year, we're levying 4.8 million, and then 5.2 we have to pay on our bonds. That's our mortgage. That's a huge chunk of money for us.
And that's 101% of our bond payment, which is the amount that they have to pay levy.
And then it drops to 0, so we can see what happens when we get to the FY25 budget. Our total collection that next year for taxes would drop down to 12,622,000. So $4 million drop in that third year out, which is awesome.
And that includes the new dollars with no abatement.
New construction and, right.
But it includes the EBF,
This doesn't
it doesn't,
include any.
EBF funding comes into the state funding.
Right, so that's what happens to the taxpayers in the next few years. That's if this passes. If it doesn't pass, or if it passes, or we are approved for this, this is what happens to our total revenue from the state. So we get our typical state collections. So it drops a little bit in a couple of years because we're collecting 685,000, but losing 869. But then once we don't have to do the abatement, then our state revenue stays. We're able to put the relief funding becomes part of our base funding minimum moving forward, and that's our base. So that's our guaranteed base moving forward. And that jumps up to 4.4 million.
When you, this is probably really obvious, when you say moving forward, that's not like in a time bracket, that just means like it's like a reset?
Yeah, that's our new starting, so the
Yeah,
way
they-
that state works is they have what's called a base funding minimum. So whatever you got the year before, that's what you start with and guarantee. You can't go backwards, so you get that plus any new funding that comes available. And that goes on in perpetuity until they cut or do something like
And
they did before.
in the instructions, it did talk about the fact that, slide back to the left a little bit, I can't remember what, okay, the tier funding, because that brings us more up to where, with the tier funding, it's estimated that that would reduce. I don't know if the amount that I reduced it is the correct amount, but it will reduce because of the fact that we have more state money coming in our base funding, so we won't get the as much additional tier funding because they're giving us that 685 in the base funding. So it basically moves us up the scale a little bit as far as being where we should be.
And are there any concerns about the, approximately 149,000 less revenue in fiscal year 23 or 24? Are those material numbers? Is there any concern?
It's, I don't,
Yes.
well, yeah.
They're material, however, we, and we'll have a conversation about that. We may have an unbalanced budget for those 2 years, but the payoff in the long run is so much greater.
I mean,
Worth it.
I agree, and now is the time,
Right.
because we're paying off the bond.
Yeah.
And so we would be able to show that we could support more of the funding, so.
Because Dr. Johns put down what we would make in this 4-year span, or not
Mhm.
make, but increase, we increased by an extra million, 1.1 million over that time frame. So
Which
that's
is-
worth it.
Yeah, it's in the ballpark of what we were able to receive when we did the referendum in 2013 for operating. So basically, you know, that as far as operating expenses, that may take us away from having to look at addressing that, you know, for the next probably 8 to 10 years.
And when we reviewed the budget, we had that rainy day fund. Is that about in the amount of 600,000 approximately?
Approximately.
Yeah,
Sounds
I'm
about
just
right.
asking. So
Yeah.
I'm just, so long as there's a plan to mitigate the
To
impact
get
of
us,
that.
to bridge
I
that.
think it's absolutely the right thing to do. I just wanna make sure there's a plan to mitigate that.
Yep. Yeah, back in, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have had this option. Or even been able to talk about 148,000.
Oh, yeah.
That would be too much.
By October, we were borrowing money to pay people.
What happens if we don't, we pass the abatement, but we don't get the relief grant fund?
You won't approve the abatement unless you get the grant.
Okay.
That'll be a separate motion, probably in February. The grants the applications are due in January, before we have our January board meeting. Then the state will notify us probably late January, early February. And I believe I just read where March is the deadline to make, to do the abatement. But I think because of the date, we may end up doing it. If in fact we would get the grant, we probably would try and do that the board meeting in February.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the application for the property tax relief grant.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Voss?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrenson?
Yes.
The motion passed.
Great, we'll see if we can get it now.
Let's hope so. Timing is everything on this one. Resolution to regulate expense reimbursements.
This one kind of goes along with the, travel, that was a 2 point something or other, but basically, the only thing this does, this is similar, actually, it's the same resolution that the board passed, I believe, in 2017. But the important part of this is it increases the meal allowance for multi-day conferences from $30 to $35 a day, and for one-day conferences from, is it 15 to 20, or, yeah, I think it's 15 to 20. So those are the only changes from the resolution that was passed in 2017 when this law went into effect that required this. Here it is. Yeah, 15 to 20 for the one-day conference. And the same guidelines that apply to the board members also apply to all the staff who travel.
To make a motion to approve the resolution to regulate expense reimbursements.
Second?
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Lawrenson?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Voss?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
The motion passed.
Bill approval and payment authorization for school board travel.
This is just to approve the cost of the III conference in Chicago.
Make a motion to approve the payment authorization for the school board travel. Second.
Does anyone have questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes?
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrenson?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Voss?
Yes.
The motion passed.
Consent agenda. Does anyone wanna pull anything out of there? No? Okay. We have a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Boss?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes?
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
The motion passed.
We have nothing on information and discussion. Does anybody wanna add anything to the future agenda items?
I have a question.
Yes.
What's the status of our polos?
I don't know. Ms. Rose?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Forgot about that.
Our polos that we bought?
Oh, I was gonna offer Ms. Roberts an opportunity, and then somebody else didn't want to. But we could get those ordered this week. If you give me a check, I'm not going to, give the check to the business office until I tell you first.
Okay.
You got mine, right?
Right.
From the moment I was like, I think I gave it to Weston, I gave it to Jordan.
Is that all we're gonna try?
No check or cash.
Or Bitcoin.
Future agenda items, school year calendar, teacher retirement system, thank you, State of Illinois. Semi-annual review of closed session minutes, district phone system. That should be coming up soon, right, Nancy?
Which one?
The phone system?
Phone systems, yeah, we'll continue to research that. The project hopefully will be done next summer at some point, or shortly before, or started before then, but we're working right now with, Amiac District 117, who would like to partner with us in a phone system and hopefully get a better value. But we're still in the research phase on that. We wanna make sure that works for Millville.
And then we have a couple of vendors too that we'll kind of work through as well, just to have some comparables so that, you know, we kind of have a good feel whether, you know, that's gonna be a good fit for us.
Yeah, yep.
Are we gonna have any additional info on the TRS supplemental stuff? I mean, more than we talked about last time?
I'll have a resolution for the January meeting,
Okay.
and then, for the January cal for you to review, and then at the meeting, then we'll have you approve that.
Okay.
TRS already sent out information to members, and they aren't able to enroll in the plan until the board takes action on the resolution and we adopt the plan. I did attend last week a webinar that they did. They're getting better at answering the questions, but it's kind of interesting that even they don't seem to totally understand the fact that they are asking us to be a fiduciary and to take responsibility. In the webinar, they were talking about somebody who, one of the concerns is it's a calendar year maximum. So if somebody was at one district for January through June, and then they come to our district in August through December, technically we're responsible for making sure they don't overpay, but we have no way of knowing what they paid in the other district to TRS. They don't seem to quite have that concept yet that they're not taking up, you know, in the webinar, they said, oh, well, that's the individual's responsibility. Well, in reality, it's not when you know, that's your plan and you've adopted that plan. So they still don't quite have it all together yet, but I think there's enough of it there, and there's enough people asking them questions and kind of forcing their hand a little bit that I'm comfortable in January going ahead and adopting the resolution and applying, and we have no choice because it is mandated by legislation that we have to participate. But I just, you know, I want them to kind of think through some of the things that they need to be thinking about, and it's not gonna happen all the time, but when you do have people that move from district to district, and if you've got people that are contributing large amounts of money, they could go over the cap. It's probably not totally, completely gonna happen, but it could. You gotta be looking at down the road, because this is something that's gonna go on forever. And then I believe then the following year, anybody new then automatically gets enrolled, and the only way that they can unenroll is they have to opt out of it. Because what they're looking at is people that are in the tier 2 plan are gonna need additional supplemental income to have similar benefits to those people that are in the tier 1 retirement system.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Superintendent's report.
Well, we're working on the calendar, and that's coming up, so in January, we will, at the first meeting in January, I'll present the calendar, and then at the next meeting, approve it, and if there's any questions at that time with the board or comments, we'll take them, of course. The feedback that I got from the original calendar was move the start date back a week in August, so we have more of an August time, more time in August before school starts, and that extends our school year a little bit into the first week of June. So that was the major shift. We shifted the conference date around a little bit because next year is an election year, so November 8th is a holiday. The state of Illinois has declared that a holiday, so we cannot have school on that day. So now, and that's a Tuesday, so we go Monday, have school, and then the kids have off Tuesday, and then Wednesday, so trying to see how we can fit that in for kids, because it's hard to transition the youngsters in and out, or even middle school kids get a little squirrely when you're bouncing around their schedule, so trying to make it a little more consistent. So we'll probably do something to not have kids in school that Monday, but it'll either be a teacher institute day or parent-teacher conference day, whatever we decide to fit in with that. So we're still working with that and getting some feedback on what
If
would
you
be
could do
best.
conferences on the 8th as well?
That's a great question. I don't know if we can.
Yeah.
Is that the election day?
It's the election day.
I don't think you can.
I don't think you can either, but I will definitely check. That's a good question, and that came up from the teaching staff. If we do conferences on yeah, I don't know.
Okay, yeah,
If we
you're
do Monday,
batting it around, but yeah, it's like
right. I know it's hard for parents. It's hard on parents to have that goofy schedule. I don't think the legislation always thinks about what that does for school and young kids, but we'll figure it out. And if we do conferences that Monday, that counts as a student attendance day toward our 176. So if we did that conferences all day and into the evening, that's a very long day to do all at once, conferences. But then having Tuesday off, teachers could recover.
Would you plan on only having one day for conferences then?
Yeah, if we did it, so we're thinking about doing one, instead of the 2 half days that we do, have one full long extended day. And go late, maybe extend the evening a little bit longer to make sure, but it seems like we're, have plenty of time now in the evening, where that second night of conferences is pretty slow. So making people stay here when they're tired doesn't make a whole lot of sense if we don't have to. As long as we can get all the conferences in for parents, and that's the main goal. So how we do that, try it if this works. We'd rather have, because it's hard to teach a half day than do conferences from 12 till 7 o'clock at night. That's a long day too.
Yeah.
So if you just do conferences all day from 9 till 8:30, 9 o'clock, and get it done, knock it out, and then have the next day off to recover. Maybe. It's hard.
Maybe parents will look at it and say, well, if I take Monday off and go to conference, then I can have Tuesday off too, because it's an election day.
Most people don't have election day off, though.
But if it's a new state holiday, maybe they will.
Maybe.
No, it's gonna be the new sales day, mattress sales.
Mattress sales day.
I think the reason it was made a state holiday was so they could access more schools for polling places.
Yeah.
It's always time for capitalism.
Need more savings, hopefully.
Alright.
So that's the calendar discussion. Other than that, we're just trying to hang on for this week. Make sure we can continue our school. We have
Yeah.
a handful of staff members who are out with COVID right now, or spouses have COVID, or kids have COVID. They're out for whatever reason, so we're stretching our subs this week. May have to fire up my teaching skills by the end of the week. We'll see. I doubt it, but I think the kids will be safe. I won't have to teach.
You need any pointers on classroom management, Peter's over there.
Peter, could you take a personal day and come and sub for us?
Absolutely. Yeah, what's the going rate?
Look at Brendan.
You know, any of these guys can start, all you need is a degree.
So that's what's happening this week. Otherwise, things are going well, actually.
Good.
Just a quick question in the COVID realm. I feel like it's been a while since we've implemented the testing. I don't know, we've really revisited and discussed it all. How's it going? And if that's
Sure.
putting you on the spot, you know, it could be an email later. It doesn't have to be right now.
No, that's fine. Just in general, we've seen a spike since Thanksgiving. It's heating up with kids, parents, teachers. I mean, Milburn is not an island, so you've got whatever's happening in our zip code and in the county, it happens at Milburn in general. I mean, it'll vary a little bit, but generally speaking, the numbers are climbing as far as our cases, for sure. Definitely.
I was actually kind of referring just like logistically, how is testing going? Like,
Testing-
Is it still?
Still 5 minutes to spit in a cup.
Yeah. Testing, I can't wait till it's over. It's going as well as it can, and it got to a very smooth point, and then our third-party vendor that was doing the collecting the spit in a cup, they went out of business, so now or something. So now we have another vendor that's trying to hire people, which is hard to do right now for anything, to come in and do the collection. So tomorrow will be our second week with this non-company. The new company hasn't even started yet because they can't get people, so we're doing directly with Shield. It's very confusing, but it gets done. It's good. We've probably had 3 or 4 cases turn up positive out of the thousands that we've tested so far, which is great. We're doing other testing, the Binax Now test, so if anybody has a symptom, like if a teacher has a symptom that's, they can go down, or a student is sick, we can test them before they go home just to see. And we've had 4 positives in the last 2 days, just at Melbourne. We had 0 before that. Our nurses were kind of wondering if it really worked, because there was no positives. But now, in the last 2 days, we've got 4 just here, so. It's popping again, which is expected. We always have a slew of strep or something at this time of the year, coming right after Thanksgiving, when people go to their cousins and hugging grandma and get all the germs mixed up, and then fires off a whole new round.
So we should expect that in January, February.
We should expect that in January. That's what happened last year. It'll kind of come down now a little bit. Christmas happens, boom, goes back up, and then it'll come back down. And last year it dropped fast, so I'm hoping we have that same experience this year. Because by February 1st, we were headed toward the low zone. That would be wonderful. And
then it would peak up after
It never-
spring break.
No,
No?
it just kind of fizzled, maybe a little bit, but it was just kind of fizzled out till July was
July,
zero.
yeah.
July was zero, and then boom, basically zero. I'm talking about our zip code. But we will see.
Sounds good. Thank you. Dr. John?
In my report, I kind of gave you a rough timeline for the food service bid from the second page. Looking at starting mid to late January and having the board approve the bid at the May meeting. And the reason it takes so long is there's at least a couple different points where even before I can send out the bid documents, I have to send them to Springfield and have somebody there approve the documents. Then once I get those back, we can do the legal ad, and they're saying they need 30 days to review them. It could happen sooner, and if it does, we'll move the cycle along. We have to do the legal ad, we have to have a pre-bid meeting. And then we have our bid opening. Once I do the bid opening, then there's actually another document that I have to complete where you analyze the bids. That has to be submitted to Springfield. They have to approve the recommendation before I can bring the recommendation back to the board for the board's approval. And then once the board approves it, then it can, then the contract is settled. But, so I'm estimating that we'll be starting in January and we'll be finishing in May. Which is not an unusual timeline. This is a process that we're required to go through every 5 years. There was an option that we could have delayed it for another year, but I'm hoping that just because a lot of people will opt to delay it, that this will give Carly a good chance to review through go through the process with me still here, especially since it's only done every 5 years. But hopefully there aren't going to be as many people bidding this year, which may make it a little bit easier as well, because of all these approvals at the state level. If a whole bunch of districts delay another year, and some of them have already delayed 1 or 2 years, because during COVID they didn't force people to rebid. So we could end up with a whole lot of people all at once in the same year, and then that means that the time frame for Springfield to reply back, because it's one person in Springfield that's doing all these reviews. So I think it's probably in our best interest to go ahead and do it now and get it done. But who knows? But that way it at least gives Carly a chance to work through it.
Is it still an 84-page bid?
I don't know how long it is, but it's long.
Crazy.
Because, you know, all the different documents you have to put in it. And because of COVID, we have to go back, I think, to 18, 19 and provide data on our lunches, because that's when the numbers were more normal. Because somebody bidding on it's going to want to know what kind of, how many students are going to eat every day, so they can figure out their profit margins and see if they can, you know, if it makes sense for their company financially to bid on our contract. I did put quite a bit. We had recently our Quick Cooperative, the insurance cooperative that does our liability and workers' comp, had a meeting in Wheeling. And so there were several things that they brought up at that meeting that I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware of, as far as the student accident program, the amount of total liability insurance that each district has in the cooperative, which I think, if I remember right, is 37 million.
Correct.
The accident coverage that we provide for all of our students at no cost to the students provides up to 5 million in coverage above and beyond what their own insurance is. If they have no insurance, then it covers first dollar. The cybersecurity is still a big issue, and that's something that is critical. You know, a lot of it ties right in with all these other tech issues and everything else as far as maintaining the security of our network and the things that the insurers are requiring in order for us to continue to be covered for cybersecurity. So if we would have a breach, we would have the insurance to cover us. So we're looking at two-factor identification for email, and there's just a lot of things that that we'll have to do. And I know we've been talking about possibly even looking at paying a company to do part of that review of our network and some of those kind of things, just to make sure that we're compliant and we can have those things in place as far as phishing campaigns and all those other things that we all now have to deal with, and just in our own banking and other kinds of things that at least I do online. You know, it's just amazing. Every time I go on, there's somebody new that's got a new hoop you've got to jump through to be able to access your data, which it does keep it safe, but it's a little frustrating at times. Workers' comp, because we are self-insured and through the cooperative, we'll have some dollars coming back to us. I don't know the exact amount, but we'll be getting those in January for the 13 through 17 fiscal years. Company nurse has been very popular as well, which that's a program we use for workers' comp, that where the employee calls and talks with the nurse and kind of works through, do I need to go get it checked, or can I just, you know, ice it or whatever if they're injured at work. And then the other thing that is happening, even though schools aren't contributing to the increase in COVID claims for workers' comp, we're kind of getting the trickle-down effect of it that is going to affect some of our rates for our reinsurance that we have in our plan. So they're expecting single-digit increases in workers' comp, but they didn't really say how many single digits. So that's something I don't think we know yet. And we're actually going to start the process of application for insurance in January, which is where we provide all the data to them as far as any for the insurance. It's basically filling out an insurance application again. And they've made it as painless as possible, but it still is a little time consuming. Another thing they pointed out was the failure to educate claims that they're starting to see throughout the country, none in Illinois at that point, but they're expecting at least a couple claims that could hit Illinois as well. And these aren't necessarily special ed, these are sometimes regularized claims as well. You know, I kind of expected the special ed. The other thing too is that, just a reminder to all of us too, that a lot of insurance doesn't cover due process claims, and our insurance through CLIC does do that. So if a parent would file a due process claim against the district, our insurance would provide coverage to help with that due process hearing. And that can be very expensive. I've gone through a few of those. I think I won't even say when, but back when I was a principal, I went through one, and I think we spent $40,000 or $50,000 between the attorney and the consultant that we used. So, and that was many, many years ago. And then the others are just activities, so nothing major. I will kind of let you know, when we did the facility maintenance grant, we did it for flooring. I have had somebody out and that kind of walked through the building with me. We had somebody else that came back and did some measuring. We were looking primarily at hallways. Kirsta came out and met with Jason and Carly and I to look at some materials, because they need that in order to give us the cost based on the cooperative bid. So once we get all that, we'll come back to the board and look, once we get an idea as to what we can do or whatever for those dollars, and do we want to throw some additional capital projects dollars into it or not, then we'll come back to the board probably sometime in January to kind of start walking through that and looking at what we're doing. But with that facility grant, we've pretty much locked ourselves into spending at least $100,000 on flooring. So we'll kind of bring that back to you. We are getting close to having the budget projection ready. There's one more piece of data that I need to get from the auditors, and then our model will be built, and then typically Jason and Carly and I sit down and kind of walk through that model and look and see if there's anything that's changing or whatever, and then we'll bring that to the board and share that information, because it basically does like a 5-year projection. So you can kind of look at, here's where we are, and assuming that these things stay constant, or that these projections, you're kind of looking, you're kind of, to some degree, using a crystal ball, but we know that well, by that point, we'll know what CPI is this year that will affect the 24 budget, 23, 24 budget.
Yeah, because we already know what 23 is, so it's gotta be 24.
So it'd be 24. And then we can estimate, the others, but it at least gives you an idea as to the big picture about where we're going as a district financially.
And CPI is the rate of inflation, so just as a
Consumer
reminder.
Price Index, urban, I believe, is the one that's used for the school districts.
So we can only collect, we are limited, we're in a PTEL, it's called a PTEL county, which is a property tax extension limitation law that was passed in 1992.
I don't remember when it was, but yeah.
So, that limits the amount of money that we can go out and tax. We just can't keep adding and adding and adding. So it's limited to the rate of inflation, which they, align the rate of inflation to the CPIU, which is why he keeps referring, and I keep referring to CPI. So the rate of inflation this year is going to be much higher than it has been. It has been close to like 0.7, 0.8, 1, 2, and so it's been really low. Now it's going to be increased, so then everything goes up.
Yeah, there was one year that we weren't sure, but maybe it was gonna be negative, and did that mean that our levy would decrease that year? Luckily, it ended up being like a 0.2 or 0.3, but, so we did have a slight increase. And on the upper end, the PTEL caps the amount we could increase at 5%. So even, let's say that CPI came in at 10%, we could only increase our levy by 5%.
Correct.
And I think that's it, all that I have for now.
Thank you. Board reports?
I'll just make it quick. I went to the, CEDAL board meeting, and, it was my first one, so mostly I was just getting the lay of the land, trying to get the ribbon. It sounds like there's some really exciting things going on over there as far as really focusing on changing the tone and interaction with the students. They've seen just some very, hard numbers and quantifiable, numbers on, incidents with students, and the way that staff is interacting with the students is much more positive, gentle, and moving towards education and helping the kids move towards better behaviors versus more punitive things. So it sounds like there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. They are having a hard time hiring, it sounds like it's even worse than it is for us, but they have a lot of ideas as far as being very innovative and thinking outside the box with some para-pros to teachers programs, working with SIU. So it sounds like there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. I could bore you with all the notes. But overall, it was again, it was my first one, so most of it was just getting my feet wet, but it was exciting to see that some positive stuff happening over there, so. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, just, really quick, the email, you sent out on Friday, I'll say, about the letters of support for the slope park.
Oh, yeah.
Improvements, thought that was pretty cool. I emailed back and forth with the administrative assistant over at Lindenhurst, and, I'll definitely sign. I don't know if we're doing that
Thanks for reminding me, that's one of the things I forgot to bring up. So the board can choose as a group to sign that letter in support of the renovations of Slope Park. All they're trying to do is they're applying for a grant, which, in order to get the grant, they have to show that they've reached out to different various community groups, and that those community groups support this project and think it will be beneficial to the community. So they're looking for us to get letters, and the more letters they have, the better it looks. So you can do it as personally on your own, or you could do it as a board to say the Milburn School Board does it, and that's totally up to you. There's nothing binding about it, it's not impacting us. I think personally, I think it'll be a great project, and anything that's good for Lindenhurst, even though it's not in our district boundary, if it's good for the village of Lindenhurst, it's good for Milburn, because anything that can help beautify and bring in and generate business in this area is a positive thing for all of us. So I think it's great. I don't see any taxes increased attached to this at this point, and I can see that, but as far as project support, I think it's a great idea.
Have they said whether it's a matching grant or who the granting body is?
Yeah, the granting body is DCEO, which is the,
The Department of Energy,
no.
yeah, I was
We
confused.
can go out onto the Lindenhurst site to see more, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
They're the one, that group is the one that used to do our energy rebates,
No,
so
that's-
now it's done by the utility companies, but.
We start bugging when we see people at the park district to revamp, our heritage park by the middle school.
Is it Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity?
that's the one.
Okay.
Where will they move Linden Fest?
I think the idea, I mean, I don't know, but I mean, I think the
Even
idea is,
Ansel, it looks like they're gonna use it.
yeah,
Yeah,
they're
well,
using
better.
it to
It'll be better.
enhance, because they're adding that amphitheater piece,
Yeah, no, that would be nice.
yeah.
So that like little Linden Fest carnival takes up that whole place, so they'd have to move
Yeah.
that somewhere else.
We'll also be getting rid of a few soccer fields that were
Yeah, those are kind of,
sparsely used
yeah, yeah,
and poorly maintained, so.
it's nice, it's a nice park,
It is.
it's cool.
I think it's a good use, I mean, it's not a big pot of land, I think it's a good use of the space and the closest thing our village has to
Yeah.
a downtown area, right?
Do we have, anyone really objecting to a board as a whole writing a letter of support?
I was gonna ask which do you think would hold more weight, to send them personally or to send a single letter collectively? Is quality or quantity preferred?
That's a good question. I can ask them. Probably if you signed it as a board and just signed all your names on it, or just
Yeah.
listed all your names, would probably be the best.
I would think so.
Like then it's a united
If that's
thing,
okay,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, does anyone think we should at least know if this is a matching grant, and if so, where the funds are coming from? I don't wanna be a stick in the mud, cause I'm all for it, I think Lindenhurst needs more. But I also don't know if this means this is a matching grant, and so there could be tax impact. I would think as a government body, we should at least understand that.
I didn't even think if it would be it sounded, but yeah, I wasn't reading between the lines on it, it seemed like it was a grant, but.
But we've got, we've gotten grants before in the past, but we're required to spend
As
in
long
order
as
to
they
get
have
grant
strings.
monies. Can we look at that, and then,
Yeah.
do you know how much time we have?
Yeah, at least till after break.
Yeah, if we can, I'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
Why don't we look at that, and then, does anyone want to draft, first draft of a letter for us?
I got it done.
Oh, you got it done? Oh, shoot. All right.
Yeah, damn, I was gonna raise my hand, I was like really excited to write that letter.
You can do it, Stephen, but it's done, it's right here.
Say less.
I'll send it out to everybody. There's nothing in there that, I was looking for the same thing, Sean, to make sure, but I didn't see anything about taxes or
Okay.
village costs.
I just wanna make sure that
Or maybe they have money set aside for redevelopment
Could be,
anyway.
right.
It'd be fine.
Then we'll do a little bit of research, then our next meeting, if we don't see anything, and you can solve.
Yeah, if there's no strings attached, then, yeah, it's important that
Yeah,
the governing bodies of Lindenhurst definitely go into it.
sounds good. Do we have any other? board
Yeah, I had
items?
one other item, just, real quick. So, probably all seen it by now, the, Antioch and Lakes District 117 built a new field house during the pandemic. It's houses lakes, but it serves both districts. I was emailing with, Jim McKay, the superintendent over there, a month ago or so, just, cause I'm interested to see it, we feed into lakes, it'd be pretty cool if he said if we wanna, schedule a brief tour or walkthrough, he'd be happy to accommodate. So I was thinking maybe sometime after the break, we could, go like 6:30 before a meeting and walk through really quick and
I
then.
just saw it on Saturday.
Oh, you did?
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Cool.
They did the choral concert there,
Awesome.
and you would think it would be a nightmare in a field house. It was like tear jerking. It was so beautiful. They did it combined with the Antioch Orchestra and the Lakes, orchestra, the Antioch Choir and the Lakes Choir. So and it was really beautiful. It was really wonderful.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's really special. So, yeah, it's a really cool space.
So if everyone's interested, Jason, could you look into that?
Yeah, just let me know when you wanna do it and we'll set it up.
I mean, maybe like before a meeting, second meeting in January or something?
Yeah, we could meet over there at like, 5:30 or something, and then tour, and then come back here for a meeting.
Whatever everybody wants to do, just thought it'd be cool to see.
I can arrange that with Dr. McKay.
Wait, what time?
5:30? 6? We can say 5:30 and you can get there as soon as you can. Yeah, it is great. I was there too on Saturday.
That's January 24th.
It was awesome.
If that works for him, it might not work for him.
I'll see what we can do.
Awesome. Anything else? All right, motion to adjourn?
Making a motion to adjourn the regular board meeting?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
We are